We've got Dr. David Starkey with us, and do you know what we're going to do, Asha and I? We're just going to do what you always ask us to do in shows like this. We're going to talk to Lois later, and we're going to talk to David straight away, and we're going to let David talk about this. David, first of all, we are in a position whereby Belgium will have a minority Christian population within the next 20 or 30 years. We're now told that white Brits will be a minority in Britain in 2063. Look, you don't know Lois McClatchy-Miller, and it's not your job to come on here and comment on a live criminal case in Belgium. But I just feel like we're losing this battle for freedom and decency and democracy and our way of life. What do you say?
Why do you say we are losing it?
Because
I know
we've already lost it.
Why is it in the present tense? What you've got to understand is that, quite simply, we have you mentioned the word democracy. You mentioned the word freedom. These words have been redefined. Europe has redefined them. It began in Germany immediately after the Second World War, and it spread out from there. This is what J.D. Vance was on about in Munich when he reduced the German president of the meeting to tears because he told the truth. He said, what you call democracy is the opposite of democracy. If democracy means anything, it means what we all knew it to mean, the rule of the majority. But it's been stood on its head to mean the protection of minority rights against the majority. The whole structure that we now have, our entire legal structure, is being completely transformed.
And they try and they call populism is now actual democracy. That's exactly, a hated word.
We've actually had to invent a new word, which is a yabu, this is a bad thing word, for what we used to mean by democracy. And what I think we've got, you were using big language, deliberately and rightly. We are a marginal island. We're on the edge of Europe. There is the Atlantic. There is America. And the huge question that is going to face our politics now over the next few years is, do we join Europe in this managed non-democracy in which all important decisions are taken by lawyers or by experts, in which parliaments simply perform rituals? You've seen repeatedly in European countries, people winning elections have been ruled to be illegal. It happened in Romania. We are seeing it within a whisker in place after place after place. We are at the very last stage of this process before it becomes final and irretrievable in this country.
Can it be dismantled, the institutions?
The ambition of the Starmer government is to complete this. This is why Starmer looks completely frozen in the headlights, because bizarrely, the legal structures that he's embraced stop him doing anything. They stop him doing what he knows he's got to, like stopping the boats. They stop him doing the extraordinary, the fact that we're releasing criminals into the street. The whole thing, we are seeing a world in which our government doesn't work anymore, and yet those in charge embrace the structures that stop it working.
So here's my question.
It's by design from Tony Blair.
It is, but it goes beyond Blair. What Blair was trying to do was to assimilate us to this European model, in which I've said it before on the show, but it really is worth repeating and worth repeating endlessly. The whole purpose of the Blair government was to make us like Europe, in which no important decisions are taken by bodies that actually are subject to election and subject to be removal by the popular vote. This is why the European Commission exists. The European Commission is deliberately removed from the popular vote. The European Parliament is a charade. In other words, they're very, very much like the absolute monarchies of the old Europe. We had a different system in which Parliament, sovereign, genuinely ruled, and it ruled because it represented everybody and was finally, in the last phase, the 19th, 20th century, answerable to everybody.
Well, I'm for the first time ever, I'm gonna tell you that you're wrong on a point, which is this. It's not just that the European Commission is undemocratic, it's counter-democratic.
It's anti-democratic.
You only get on it if you've been specifically rejected by the voters of your own country. Leon Britton, Neil Kinnock, Edith Cresson.
Von der Leyen.
These people were rejected by the voters. It's not people's own.
All you've had to have done as the current president, you've just mentioned now, von der Leyen, actually did her job incredibly badly. She was the worst German Minister of Defence there has ever been. While she was Minister of Defence in Germany, the German army was reduced to using broomsticks for military drill because they didn't even have enough rifles. And we are now in a world, of course, in which Europe is trying to rearm. So we mustn't forget the really big point that we are now. It's very much like we've talked about 1984 before. 1984.
Yeah, but that was in the pub before we arrived.
No, it wasn't. It was on this show. Your memory is weak. My memory is much better than yours. Less addled by trips to the pub. In 1984, Britain is this island. It is Airstrip 1. It's this island at the edge of the great Eurasian bloc and America at the other side, and we're the marginal country. And I think that's what we are. Again, all of this nonsense that as it were, history connects us to Europe. It doesn't.
No.
We have not been a European power since the late Middle Ages. We're a different sort of power. We're not a land power. We're a sea power. Our connections naturally take us to the rest of the English-speaking world. And again, all of that was deliberately ruptured by the accession to the European Union, and particularly by Blair from 1997.
So I've got two things that I want to talk about. I mean, number one is what we've got on this list, which was given to us by the producers, which is white British people will be a minority by 2063. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I genuinely believe that there are concentric circles where I love my brother more than I love you, and I love you more than I love somebody I've never met, and I love somebody I've never met in Britain more than I love somebody from France.
You're reciting J.D. Vance again.
Yeah, exactly right. But then there's another thing that we talked about, which was this. How can we ever get this country back unless we take control of the constitution of this country? And there's this thing that Hayek says, which is that when people talk about law being aligned with politics and law being aligned with society, he says, imagine the law of fair play. Right, it's hard to write down, isn't it? But we all know what the law of fair play is. We now
you do me a good turn and I do you a good turn.
Yeah, exactly. We live in a country.
Reciprocity.
We live now in a country that does two things. Number one, brings people to the country that's alien to us and assumes that they are the same as us, which they're not, and forcibly insists they're the same as us. And then it creates a law which is alien to our culture. Now, David, I imagine you can draw those two together, but I don't understand how it goes together.
Right, let me explain. Have you heard of Bertolt Brecht,
yes.
the German playwright? Bertolt Brecht was a kind of licensed dissenter from communism in East Germany. The nearest thing to his role is Ian Hislop, as the licensed fool on the BBC, allowed to say slightly naughty things, providing he doesn't challenge the big narrative. And Brecht came up when East Germany was going through a really rough patch. And do you know what? They started to lose elections. Well, of course, in communism, you're not allowed to lose elections. So there was a major move to sort it all out. And Brecht came up with this brilliant letter which said, it's really very deplorable that the people are not voting in the right way. This is a disgrace, as they now have a liberated communist rule. The only solution, listen to it, is to change the people.
Yes.
And precisely what Blair did from the early 1990s, the later 1990s, is deliberately to change the population of Britain. That is, I think it's entirely deliberate. There is a notion that the people were old-fashioned, were conservative, were rooted in their ways, were insular, and they needed shaking up. We needed to become part of this big international melting pot because it's interesting, it's trendy. It's new, this worship of the new of the Blair years. And we should now all have learned a really terrible lesson. New may be good in technology. It's usually rubbish when you start playing with old established institutions.
I'm going to ask you this one question right now. Should I thank the British government? Should I thank the police? Should I thank the Home Office? Should I thank schools and universities when they say to my nieces and nephews, you being white makes you an inferior citizen in your own country?
No, I think completely the opposite. It is a matter of disgrace. But this is the logical extension of this. But it also, you asked me to fit it together with law. The really shocking thing, both of you, is everybody jokes about two-tier Keir. Ash, it is not a joke.
Not to me.
It is actually true. Andre, it really is true. Let me quote now.
Well, they tried to put it into law, didn't they?
No, they didn't try. They succeeded.
Well, yeah.
No,
but officially.
Explain.
That's just what I'm going to do. The man who more than anybody else, even more than Tony Blair, even more than Gordon Brown, is responsible for this complete inversion of everything that we thought was good about British law and I think largely British politics, because as Andre has just said, the constitutional law and politics is really what shapes us. When we talk about the constitution of a country, it's like the constitution of a person. It's the essence. It's the thing that gives shape, structure, health to the whole body. And the man who is more than anybody else responsible for perverting this is a man called Tom Bingham, Lord Bingham, the senior law lord. He is responsible for the introduction, largely, of the ECHR, of the European Convention on Human Rights, although Jack Straw was the political fall guy for it. He is the man, although he never sat on the Supreme Court, is responsible for the idea of the Supreme Court. He reinvents this new thing called the rule of law. Have you suddenly noticed? We've heard endlessly about
justice, only the rule of law.
Endlessly about not common law, not our traditional rights as Englishmen and English women, but human rights law and international law, this bizarre thing that apparently requires us not only to give away the Chagos Islands, but actually to bribe them with 30 billion. So let me, you asked me for a really specific point.
I did.
Well, I'm trying to give you an idea of the importance of Bingham. Bingham, when he was lecturing on all of this in Australia, he made precisely in legal language the point you were just making now. He said, human rights law, by definition, is counter-democratic insofar as it is deliberately anti-majoritarian. It rejects the dominance of everything by majorities. It says it is there specifically to protect minorities.
But here's what I don't understand,
but
David.
Just to conclude, because it's one of these statements. It's made in 2007, but it's actually prophetic, because he then goes on and says, what are the minorities we ought to protect? The mentally sick, the Roma, the asylum seeker, the criminal. Look at the cases we've just seen. Ruda Cabana, Kalokane, the rioting Roma in Leeds.
But why? But here's the thing. And look, I appreciate I'm getting shouting now, but I'm upset. Here's what I don't understand. Why should I turn round to my law-abiding, decent family members and say, listen,
because you have the misfortune to share the same skin colour as Hitler.
You have to surrender. You have to surrender yourself. You have to surrender yourself for sex with a pervert from Pakistan. You have to surrender yourself for that. You have to surrender yourself for that.
I'm trying to explain to you.
I know
that what happens is whiteness was associated
with crime.
With essentially not simply crime, a fundamentally criminal culture,
and nationalism as well,
which is infinitely wicked. But let's just go back to the stage. It all begins with what was seen as the catastrophe of democracy in Germany. This is where it all goes back to. The argument that Hitler was elected, which is semi-true, and ruled largely with the consent of the German people, which I think is true. And at that point, the deep deep sentiment takes hold in our, as it were, elders and betters, that the people can't be trusted. The fundamental thing is that the left, the international left, the liberal left, the right-on, the good thinkers, the woke, know their ideas are deeply unpopular. They know they are hated, and they are therefore, they have to use, this is the bizarre thing, the machinery of human rights, which was originally designed to protect you and me against an overpowerful state, has instead been stood on its head. And it's been turned into a machinery by which the overpowerful state protects unpopular minorities who rapidly are becoming a majority. Exactly.
By 2063, I mean, that will be their undoing, though, with these planners. It's going to be their undoing.
Precisely.
They don't care.
They don't care. But the essential thing is, words have simply been stood on their head. Traditional legal values have been stood on their head. But the problem is, so few people have understood it. I didn't understand it. We all sat through Blair and we giggled. When he talked about a new country and having a glottal thought and trying to pretend to be a populist, we all laughed. We laughed at silly, flatulent Gordon Brown selling our gold reserves for twopence halfpenny. We didn't take it seriously.
And Boris Johnson, we laughed at him, and then he laughed at
Boris Johnson.
I'll tell you what we're not going to do. I was going to ask you a question. Look, it's 20 past. We do need to go to a break. But here's what I'm going to say to all of you. This is a really important night. This is the first time that this show has come under attack. With Lois McClatchy-Miller being arrested in Belgium, attack by the Belgians, probably not that nervous about it, but nonetheless we've got David Starkey here to talk about all of the implications, not just of the arrest of Lois McClatchy-Miller tonight, but also of the attacks on our freedom, on our democracy, on our society, and also the fact that we've been told by the University of Buckingham today, you'll be an ethnic minority in your own country. But hey, let me tell you something else. Don't worry about it, because you're already being racially abused by these people. We're going to have a special show tonight in which we talk about how we can take back control of this country, how we can save Britain from this appalling attack. And I will tell you, Dr. David Starkey is without question the leading person in this country to discuss it. I defend your right to wear whatever it is you want, but I defend my right to say it is my tradition that if you dress up in all black covering your face, it is extremely intimidating to me. It is extremely intimidating to my family. And I am not going to put up with that, because you need to change yourself. If you are Saudi Arabian, not me need to change to you. But you're not Saudi Arabian, are you? Actually, you are somebody from a moderate country like Bangladesh, where you've decided to start wearing the burqa in order to state that you hate Britain, that you hate democracy, that you hate freedom. Zia Youssef, and this is the thing that's divided us. Lots of you phoned me and said, don't defend Zia Youssef. When you scratch the surface, he'll just be as bad as all the rest of them. And do you know what I said? I said, what a disgusting racist you are. And I want to apologise to you today, because the reality is that the minute Zia Youssef was asked to choose between this country and Islamic fascism, unfortunately, he picked the wrong side. David Starkey, your view?
I think there are two big questions. The first one is yours about intimidation. Also, the fact that it covers illegal behaviour. Covering the face, being masked, being hooded. And you will not believe this, but for most of our history, wearing a hood and covering your face was illegal. Because it was seen as a sign of intent.
You got the death penalty in about the 1600s if you went out with a blackened face for burglary and stuff.
I'm not sure whether it was quite that. I mean, your knowledge of this may be better than mine, Ash. God, there's a big question mark. Big question mark hanging in my voice.
He didn't get that.
Big question mark in my voice. But the important point is, it was seen as a distinct sign of criminality, and it was illegal. And I think the whole business now, look at particularly the processions that have been taking place in London every week in favour of Palestine. The number of people who've got face coverings, whether they're wrapping the funny checkered scarf or whatever it is around their faces, this should be illegal.
I think it actually is. They make a section 14, but they don't.
But then, of course, our
it.
laws are now honoured in the breach and not the observance. But it is profoundly intimidating. It gives you. I think it's exactly the same as concealing the number plate on your car. And there's only one reason.
Terrorists have used it.
There's only one reason to do that. It is to break the law. So I think.
Can I ask you this question? If it is your tradition to wear the burqa, I'm happy with you doing that. A small number of Saudi Arabians come and visit London. Very few of us ever meet them. But, I mean, if you go to Harrods, you'll see quite a lot of them. But I'm happy with that. In the same way that Sikhs can wear the turban if they're in the police. But my tradition is that if you dress up like a ghoul, I will be intimidated. And I think that if you are wearing not the traditional dress of Pakistan, not the traditional dress of Algeria, not the traditional dress...
This is the new dress.
Yes, for here.
It's the new dress of international Islamism in the West.
Correct.
Islamism in the West.
It's like wearing a swastika.
Can we just then follow this through? Because so I think there's one very powerful argument against it, that I think that the concealment of the face is totally against what we are used to in this country. To conceal the face suggests malign, if not illegal, intent. That's the first thing. The second thing is a much bigger point. We have now got to start to ask a fundamental question. How far can we tolerate a religion which is, in many of its aspects, fundamentally hostile to our traditions, to our laws? Now, we used, again, let's start telling the truth. We had an entire system of law that was designed to deal with another religion which threatened the state, which was aggressive Roman Catholicism that gave the Pope the right to determine who our king was, and indeed actually to encourage the murder of somebody like Elizabeth. And there were laws which were designed not to persecute Catholics, but to stop the spread of Catholicism and to stop Catholics importing papal legislation which would authorise disobedience or authorise actual...
David, I'm sorry, we're going to have to stop you there simply because we started this show by saying that one of our contributors, David, I'm really sorry, one of our contributors had been arrested in Belgium. We've now managed to get Lois McClatchy-Miller on. Dr. David Starkey, I do apologise.
No.
Lois, first of all, are you okay? Tell me where you are and tell me you're safe.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm safe. I've been released from jail, and we're back at the hotel that we were staying at. We were Chris Elston, Billboard Chris, and I were here in Belgium to be spreading an important message over a day that children cannot consent to puberty blockers, and that we should love children the way they are instead of subjecting to drugs and scalpels to change their gender. Of course, all children are born beautiful and don't need that. And we were sharing this message out in the streets today. And honestly, we'd barely been there for 5 minutes before this all kicked off, and we ended up getting arrested.
What were you arrested for? What was the arrest?
So it's a bit confusing and convoluted. So at first it was to do with
Lois, you sound bad. Have you eaten?
Sorry.
Are you safe?
I'm a little bit. I've just come out, and it's been like a bit of a crazy day. But I'm very grateful to you guys and all the work that you do in promoting important messages, and so I wanted to hop on here.
Are you on bail then? Can you leave Belgium?
No, yeah, all is good. So we were not charged in the end, which I think is a testimony to the fact that we were
do me a favour, and I appreciate you're a little bit kind of
discombobulated.
Discombobulated is a great word. Why don't I ask you, just start from the beginning, which was, you told us a couple of weeks ago that you were going to go to Belgium and you were going to launch a protest, which was to say that children are beautiful and amazing and a gift to any parent. And I think everybody would agree with it. Your favourite voice is the child, your favourite smell is the child, your favourite thing to watch is whatever it is that they do. And you are saying that we shouldn't allow doctors to amputate the genitals of those children, to mutilate them in those way. and to poison them with chemical castration, which, by the way, the British government was going to give to paedophiles, but we're already giving to children through the Tavistock Clinic. You said to me, I'm going to go to Belgium and make this protest with Billboard Chris. I don't know what happened after that until we spotted your husband tweeting. Tell us a little bit. One
critical distinction, Andre, is that we weren't protesting. We were just having conversations in the street, which is very lawful and legal to do. It's just sharing a point of view, engaging in.
But what did you do? You went to Belgium and what?
So we stood out on the street with signs that say children cannot consent to puberty blockers, and that no child has ever been born in the wrong body. And these signs are conversation starters, and you'll have seen Billboard Chris's work. He does this all over the world, having people just come and agree with him or disagree with him, and it sparks an important conversation. So that's all we were doing, just having conversations in the street. It's not a demonstration or a protest. You don't need a permit to just chat to people or anything like that. And so that's what we were doing. But unfortunately, quite a violent mob descended. Were very threatening towards me, especially. And I actually called the police because I was in fear for our safety.
And were you sort of arrested for your own good, like they say over here? You were looking too Jewish at the Palestinian march. I mean, is that why they did it, and that's why you didn't get charged?
Well, it was very convoluted, and along the way we had very mixed messages from police officers. Some saying we were going to get criminal charges for it, and then some saying that in the end they said, oh well, this was just kind of to keep the peace and to get you out of the way, which I think is unjustified really, because it's.
Lewis, can I just ask? You said a hostile mob attacked you. Who were they? Were they transsexuals? Was it just a load of lefties? Was it just ordinary people in the street?
Well, what I think happened is I did see somebody spot us early on who was kind of dressed all in black, and I saw them kind of take some pictures and get on their phone, and I wonder if they kind of summoned a lot of friends to come. Because it was very interesting. A lot of them all were wearing black, which I was kind of surprised they'd managed to coordinate. And so, we don't have a clear idea.
You said they were wearing black. In other words, they looked like Antifa?
They looked like it. I mean, at this point, I really have no idea who they were or where they came from, but they were all kind of wearing a lot of them.
Were they a renter mob sort of
thing? Were they masked?
Yeah. Some of them had masks on, yeah.
Which does make the point.
That's exactly the point that I was making. The whole way in which the left now turn up, looking exactly as fascists used to. There's an extraordinary inversion. The use of direct mob attack is now largely from the left. Jews in America have actually now started saying this publicly, whereas it used to be the KKK and the extreme right. They are now subject to attack from
By the way, I just want to say something, and I've never said for anybody to break the law in any way whatsoever on this show, but I just want to say to you, Lois, if you are required to go back to a police station in Belgium, my advice is to leave the country via Schengen and never talk to the Belgians again. And I'll tell you the reason, because we have a right in this building, and you are part of our family and part of our community. We have a right to do journalism, and the fact that you have talked to people in Belgium and been arrested for it, screw them. Let the Belgian embassy have a go at me. Let the Belgian embassy have a go at our viewers and listeners.
That's very, very kind of you to say, Andre. I do believe in freedom of speech, and I believe that having conversations in the street is a right that every citizen has, whatever they want to speak about. So I want
to now say one final thing to you. We're incredibly proud as a community of what we do, and we're incredibly proud to have you as a contributor. I know your husband was dreadfully worried in the past couple of hours, and so was everybody who was aware of it. I swear to you that this company will absolutely defend all of its contributors. We don't care whether it's a nation state. We don't care whether it's an international terrorist body. You have the right to stand up for free speech, and I'll tell you, they'll have to invade this floor before we stand down. But more importantly, let me say to you, Lois, you seem a little bit dazed, but you are absolutely fantastic, and we're incredibly proud to have you. You're an asset to this country. You're an asset to your religion, my religion, and you're an asset to this channel. And I want to thank you. Okay, I'll tell you what we'll do. Why don't we go for an early bath now, and we'll talk to David Starkey straight after that. We've got Dr. David Starkey here tonight on what has been an important night for this show in terms of understanding everything that's taken place, attacking our community, attacking our countries, and attacking our democracy. David, in the break, you said that you wanted to make some points about what you'd heard from Lois. Why don't you just do that?
What is so striking is this is somebody who was just engaged in conversation. She didn't do anything. We're in this strange world now where words matter more than actions.
Yeah.
You can get away with direct crimes and be punished less than for incautious words. And this represents a complete inversion of everything we have traditionally valued. But there's again a reason for it. Because this new legal structure that we're talking about is also designed to do something else. It's designed to make us believe things that we know are untrue. So words and the regulation of language suddenly become of central importance. Our entire, as it were, the entire public face of Britain depends on purveying, let's use proper words, you could call, if we were being polite, this is not a show on which we are polite. If we're being polite, we call them myths. We call it the myth of multiculturalism. Shall we call it by its proper name?
Bollocks.
The lies.
You repeat a lie enough, it becomes the truth.
Lies is a much stronger word than just the casual vulgarity. It's lies. And we are ruled by lies, by the lies that diversity is strength, when in fact diversity is profound weakness. Diversity of thought, yes, but diversity of cultures, diversity of races, diversity of religions and clashes. The only way you can handle diverse societies is not by democracy. If you have democracy, each group fights everybody else. And instead, you have to have stronger and stronger central control and more control, above all, of speech. And that, unfortunately, is the road down which we are going.
But hang on a second. When we had dinner together at Rules, when we had dinner
Stop
together...
boasting. Yes. By the way, he paid for it. There was a miracle.
Man of the people. Man of the people.
I turned up without my wallet. Yes.
You have to pay in guineas there.
He always turns up without his wallet. I had a Guinness.
I'm so grand.
By the way, I had a Guinness and he had a glass of white wine. We won't talk about the food. But what you said was, you said that, look, Britain is a political construct. Look, you're gonna pull me apart from the way I describe this. Britain is a political construct. So there's Lancashire, there's Yorkshire, there's Scotland, there's Wales, there's England and Ireland, and later Northern Ireland. Why can't there be, Burnley being Pakistan? Why can't there be, these tribal areas, almost these reservations, like in the United States of America? Now, you know my political view, but I think it's important that you explain the difference between a Yorkshireman and a Lancastrian having war for years and us having a United Kingdom in which there is a legitimate right of self-determination for a Pakistani community in Birmingham.
Well, there isn't. I mean, what was very remarkable, right, Britain is essentially Greater England.
Right.
It's the result of the assimilation, the conquest in the case of Wales, union with Scotland, a very uneasy all sorts of relations with Ireland.
Yes.
This is why I think the big point that I was trying to make over dinner, one of the reasons that we've actually been able to handle immigration is because we are not a single nation. There is not a single British nation. And I don't know about you, my blood crawls when people refer to us as Britons. Britons were naked and didn't wear blue shirts. They covered themselves in, like you, they covered themselves in blue paint. They covered themselves in blue paint. What we used to have as a single bond of union between England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, Ireland, whatever, was loyalty to the Crown. But we were separate nations.
Yeah.
I always make this point, the first football internationals were between England and Scotland. So in one sense, we've been able to accommodate these semi-separate communities with dangerous ease. But the problem is this. They fight everything that was the achievement of England and Britain. They fight the idea that we're all equal before the law. They fight the idea that we are all susceptible to the same government. This mysterious thing that appeared during the riots, do you remember? Community leaders. The police discussing how the law would be enforced with community leaders.
But there's only one community, isn't there?
There should only be one political community. And indeed, the reason that we enjoyed the success that we did, we enjoyed equality before the law, developed property rights and everything else, paradoxically, was because the English crown was so strong that it could actually force everybody, even noblemen, to obey the same law. And what we're doing now, willfully, is to import a foreign... Let me finish. A foreign system of law, which is increasingly Sharia, which is increasingly being carried.
I understand that, but if I live in a country where John Major, now by the way, just people don't understand this. Judge Rinder and Sharia courts exist for the same reason, and people are confused by that. That's because John Major brought in the right of arbitration, quasi-legal arbitration, so you can go to a group of tribal elders or you can go to Judge Rinder. Now, it's fair to say Judge Rinder is so up his own bum that it's unlikely that he'll ever complain, he'll ever be anything. But look, let me make a serious point. Why can't my ward say we wish to elect a tribal elder from the Pakistani community, and your ward say, well, we're a Christian community and we're going to do that? Now, once again...
You love Northern Ireland. Do you want the sectarianism of Northern Ireland? You've got Northern Ireland ancestry.
Correct.
I've just come back from Northern Ireland. There is this myth that the troubles in Northern Ireland were solved. They weren't. They were simply frozen. The barriers are still there. They're open in the day, they're closed at night.
More peace walls than before the Troubles.
There are more peace walls than there were actually before the Troubles. Do we want to go down that route?
Well, maybe we do, because that's what Starmer wants, doesn't he?
It is the route effectively down which we are going, and it's terrifying. We should be genuinely. Do we want to look at the Middle East? Look at Northern Ireland. Look at the tribal traditions of Africa. Do we want to go down?
Look what happened to Iran.
But sorry, Andre, just for 1 second. I want the listeners to listen and to think. You have seen those scenes. You have seen the scenes of rape, of sack, of destruction, of torture. We, once upon a time, 1,000 years ago, had things like that. We got rid of them. It was the triumph of our country and the triumph of our politics to do so. Don't you want to stop it happening?
Well, the Middle East was...
Don't you want to get that old world
No,
back?
I don't. I don't want to stop it. I'm going to tell you.
I think I'm going to walk out.
No, I'm going to represent the British government. I'm going to represent the British Parliament. I'm going to represent the Home Office. I'm going to represent the police. I'm going to quote Sadiq Khan. There is no such thing as grooming gangs, only misogyny. I
think we've used the word lies, haven't we, Andre? And you're now just repeating official lies.
But the point is, it is the policy of your country, my country, to balkanise this country, to create race wars. Can I tell you something? Asher Gould's a Jew. Do you think these people have a future in this country?
Well, no, I mean...
But sorry... All
I'm
of that...
Never.
Yeah. Obviously, there are tendencies which are leading in exactly that direction. So people like Jess Phillips, the minister supposedly in charge of doing something about this, has actually encouraged it by her own language. But we've all got to stop just doing what you've done, to saying this is unstoppable, this is happening. Anybody who cares about their country has got to do one thing, to say, I do not want it. I will resist it. Not resisted, as was done with the riots, not resisted by posting stupid tweets, but by informing yourselves, becoming politically active, joining parties that will do something about it. We have a duty as citizens, if we value those freedoms and everything that mattered about us, to do something, not to be fools, but to come together in genuine, honest, decent political action.
Let's go to a break now. Now listen, every single time we have David Starkey on, the number one complaint is, let David say more. We've got about another 6 or 7 minutes with David Starkey. And David, you were going to suggest some ideas about how people can help, but also perhaps you can talk about what's going on in Britain with the Gaza situation as well.
I think the more important thing is, frankly, to talk about what people can do actually to help.
Yes.
And what is needed, we've got to recognise, we've been being very rude about Tony Blair, we've been talking about this deliberately anti-democratic world that he created. We've now got to come together, politicians essentially on the right, and decide we will undo. We've got to do exactly what Margaret Thatcher did in the later 1970s, when she confronted the winter of discontent, when she confronted over-powerful trade unions, insane nationalised industries and whatever, and she pulled it down. You have to recognise you have to take things down before you can rebuild. We've got to repeal the whole structure that Blair created. The Quangos on the one hand, the Monetary Policy Committee of the Bank of England, English Nature,
Supreme Court.
But that's not a Quango. English Nature, the Climate Change Committee. Remember, Quango, do you know what percentage of government expenditure Quangos handle? 1/3. They handle just short of £400 billion a year, right. Entirely unsubject to you as the control of a citizen, or largely Parliament and ministers. They've got to be got rid of. What Ash mentioned now, we've got to start to dismantle this totally alien, anti-democratic, counter-democratic, pro-minority legal system. Get rid of the ECHR. Get rid of the Supreme Court. Above all, get rid of the Equality Act. The Equality Act is the maddest piece of legislation ever passed. It's rendering Birmingham bankrupt. It is about to render half our retail trade bankrupt. It has opened the gates to everything everything Lois was talking about. Transgenderism was essentially pushed on the back of the gender clauses of the Equality Act. It is insane. It has to go. And what I'm delighted to be able to say to everybody, there is now serious groups of people looking at how the legislation can be drafted, looking at how the political system can be reclaimed, not for yet another elite, but for you, the electorate.
David, I want to ask you this final question. And look, I appreciate that there is vested interest in this room, and I don't care about the fact that I am really happy to serve this country, as Asher will be and you will be if we're called up. I need you to tell us why the House of Lords needs to be saved, not abolished.
We need, if finally democracy, Parliament, is to resume its proper job of actually governing us, or government through Parliament, we've got to have people who can handle the detailed, the precise drafting of legislation, who understand the immense range of complexities behind it. At the moment, all this is franchised out to Quangos.
Yes.
What you need within Parliament is a body of serious expert opinion who are prepared to submit finally to the democratic will.
But we've got to deport en masse, or the democracy won't work, because we have people who don't like our culture.
Do you mind if you don't answer that, because we've only got a minute, and we can debate that in a minute. But here's the point that I want to make to you, and I'm asking this question deliberately, just to be clear. Can we abolish the Quangos if we allow the House of Lords to be the dump, unintellectual graveyard that it is at the moment, or do we need a House of Lords full of experts that can make the granular decisions needed?
you're confusing two stages. We'll probably, I'm afraid, need an even worse House of Lords to make the changes.
It's good news for me and Asher.
And maybe good news for all of us. An even worse House of Lords. You will need simply a Parliament that's, for once, compliant. Remember, at the moment, the House of Lords is the great centre of resistance to any kind of sensible change. This is the terrifying thing. I'm afraid things will have to be undone. Then, as part of the process of reconstruction, because my idea is, and the one that is being picked up, we need the great repeal. We need to undo what Blair did. But then there needs to be the good stage, the stage of restoration. Absolutely. And that's when your vision for a reformed House of Lords, your vision for a reformed Parliament, your vision, our vision, for a reformed politics. That's when that will come to pass. But it's stage 2.
I'm going to say this, David. This is the end of the show. And what we were alluding to, very simply, was this: the debate that's going on behind the scenes about people like us being called up to Parliament in order to vote down the Supreme Court, to vote down the Quangos, to vote down the vested interests in the House of Lords. And I want to say to all of you, just as many of you have stood for council, we will do our duty, but I'll tell you what we'll also do. We'll walk away when it needs to be done to walk away. David Starkey is the leader of the constitutional conservative, the constitutional defender gang in this country. I'm so proud that you came in today.